both times he was wearing the Afro wig, which is kind of peculiar for a skinny white guy to be wearing a Afro wig.
Absolutely. Now, how long?
It kind of stuck in my mind. And subsequently, when I did interview the suspect, he admitted to me and to others that he had an Afro wig. And so, to my mind, that's pretty strong corroborative evidence, at least that he was at the scene
of the murder. Now, you witnessed this situation there that night, the Afro, this weird ceremony going on, naked girl. When did you find out about the murders taking place in that church?
Several days later, I was flying to some business meeting in Southern California. And I saw a headline on a newspaper of somebody in the airplane talking about someone being killed in the church. And I thought, wow, that's strange. I was just there. But I did to the meeting. I did not read the newspaper. And subsequently, in Southern California, I was out of the news cycle. I was not part of the major push by the media to explore what had been going on there. I was out of the loop. I wasn't watching television. I wasn't reading newspapers. Basically, I forgot about it, except for thinking that it was a weird thing that I'd seen. And so I was not able to come forward immediately and give my evidence until much later when I did talk to a retiring policeman. And the case was still open, and that is when I to make my report.
So how many years later was that?
Oh, something like 40 years later.
40 years later, okay. Now, and so you have reported this to the police. The police took you seriously. They interviewed you. Describe that whole situation.
Well, I met not only current cold case detectives from the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department, but I also met a retired detective who originally was in charge of the Arliss Perry murder at that time. And I met them at a restaurant, I think it was down in Gilroy, where I gave them my testimony, and I also volunteered to give them to verify the fact that I was not actually a suspect, that I was not one of those weirdos who comes out of the woodwork and wants to semi-confess. But in any case, I gave my testimony and I gave my DNA. And subsequently, I met with the retired detective, a Randy Bynum, and we went together to see the suspect in Southern California at a performance. That is where I interviewed him in the green room, and that's where he confessed to having had a Afro wig, which he wore when he was at Stanford.
And when you interviewed him, you did it under the guise of being a reporter, right? Or you interviewed him as a...
Well, I called the Associated Press before the meeting, and I told them that I wanted to take pictures of the performance and that we were going to be speaking to the performer, and that if there was an interest on their part, that we'd be willing to bring those forward to the Associated Press. They decided not to accept those photos and the interview, but it was, frankly, so that we would have legitimacy if the fellow or his handlers decided to do a checkup to make sure that we were, in fact, legitimately there interviewing him.
And when you went there and interviewed him, you didn't actually confront him about the murders or anything like that, right?
I did not. The moment that he admitted that he did have the Afro wig, I had a strong urge to place him under citizen's arrest.
Right.
But I was there with the former detective and with a psychologist who was also pretending to be a reporter. And I respected their opinion that it was unwise to make any moves on the guy until we were able to make our report and have the authorities make decisions as to what steps to take that would be legal, legitimate, and reasonable, so that it would not perhaps screw up the case. I would not want a murderer or possible murderer to walk free because of any mistakes that I made.
So Randy Bynum is retired state trooper, I believe?
No, he is a retired detective from the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department, and he was in charge of the Arliss Perry murder case at the time.
Right.
He is now he's retired from the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department. He runs a private detective company in California.
Right. He's a private investigator. And this is a serious guy. He's not like an ambulance chaser. He's not a glory hound. He's not looking for media attention all the time. I've tried to interview him a few times, and he's always backed away. So he's not someone who's flighty to just kind of come up with stuff. He's taking it seriously is what I'm trying to say. Okay? He's taking
Well, let me put it to you this way. My opinion of Mr. Bynum is that he is a professional.
Right.
He has a lot of experience in doing police work. And he is shy of going to the media because he prefers for all actions to be channeled through the authorities, which in this case is the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department.
Have you spoken to him since this new development?
I have not. I have thought of it, but I have not yet called him. I tried getting him to talk to me about various aspects of the case for a number of times, a number of months. And I have the same issue as you do in that he's very reticent.
Right.
He does not want to commit to anything that would, again, cause the possible murderer to go free because of some bad action or wrong action on my part or his part or our part. So I respect that.
Now, you don't have a book or anything, right?
A book?
Yeah, a book. Like you haven't written a book about this? I'm trying to get now. We're trying to examine your motives. Like if people say, "Well, I don't believe Brian Mcrackin. He has a motive to lie. He has a motive to make this story up." So, but now, what about you? Did go to somehow the press found you, or you contacted the press? I believe it's the New York Post.
Well, that's kind of complicated.
Okay.
What happened is that in my trying to find out more information about this, I read about the Berkowitz notations about the murder, saying that he knew who it was. And I wrote a letter to Berkowitz in jail in New York. He's there for life, of course, because of murder. And I took some random mugshots off the internet, and I mixed them with the picture of the person that I had named as a suspect. And I asked him to pull who he thought was the murderer out of that lineup, which I had put in the letter. He never responded. However, I found out later that someone in the jail, in the prison, had sent my letter to some friend of theirs or some associate, a Leo law enforcement person in North Dakota, I believe it was. And subsequently, the press got hold of it. They contacted me, and so much time had gone past from the time that I made the report to the fact that I had not action from the investigators determining whether or not the DNA or handprint evidence had been checked up on with the suspect. I decided that the best thing to do to move justice forward was to go public with what I had known, what I saw.
So you did an interview.
So do I have motive? Have I thought of writing a book? Yes, I have thought of it because, frankly, I'm wondering whether or not that would help move things forward. But have I written one? No. Am I motivated for anything besides telling the truth? No.
And now, were you paid for that New York Post interview?
No, not at all.
And you never asked me for money. I did an interview. No, I found you. You didn't come looking for me. I found you. right? Yeah, I did.
No one has offered money, and if they did offer money, then I wouldn't take it.
Right. You never asked me for money. I never offered you.
Right. I'm strictly interested in justice for Arliss and her family.
Besides the interview you've done with me, have you done any other interviews?
Only with the New York Post.
See, so you're not looking for publicity either. I kind of bug you, too, to come on the show, right? You don't really come looking for me. Okay. So, but, we've become Facebook friends. You're always kind of making kind remarks and stuff like that. Now, so you're not a glory hound. You're not getting paid for this so far. We can lay that out. I can testify to that myself. Now, what do you make of the Berkowitz tale where he claims that Bill Menser was involved, and in this cult, and they stalked her from North Dakota? I'm sure you've read the Mortuary book and you've followed all that. What do you make of that theory?
Well, like anyone else, I have absolutely no idea whether or not he's just a raving nut to have the excitement and adrenaline rush of being part of something, or whether or not he actually did know something and that he thought about possibly revealing it, but then changed his mind because, quote unquote, he's found Jesus and he wants to put all that behind him. I don't know. That is why I sent him the letter giving him the opportunity to pull a person out of a lineup, but it didn't work. It actually backfired on me in terms of giving me fairly unwanted publicity and the attention of the media. But that was my attempt. I was trying to get the information from Berkowitz. He decided not to respond. And so whether he knew or did not know, I have really no idea. Obviously, from what he's done in terms of the people he's murdered, he has some kind of problem. Whether he's completely insane or emotionally disturbed or whatever, I don't know. But whether he actually does know who killed Arliss or not, I would like to know that. I would like to go there and interview him. But that hasn't happened yet.
It doesn't surprise me that who's ever checking Berkowitz's mail, would have tipsters and contacts in the media that he sells tips to and stuff like that. That doesn't surprise me. Now, yeah, and Berkowitz, the people he named in the cult, Sam Carr, they lived in North Dakota, and so there is a connection there as far as that goes. So there's all that. And how would Berkowitz know about this obscure case anyway? This wasn't a famous case until Maury Terry started talking about it. It wasn't nationwide famous, but it wasn't famous in New York, I
don't know, but, there's again, a little piece of speculation that I'll do. There's a cult called Thelema.
Right.
Are you familiar with the Thelema cult?
Yeah, the Aleister Crowley, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it just happens that there was a coincidence between the Arliss Perry murder and the anniversary. I forget if it's the birth or death of Aleister Crowley was that night.
Really? I didn't know that.
For someone doing a ritual who was a member of Thelema and who was an aficionado of Crowley and his dark arts, that would be a connection. That would be a possible clue.
Yeah, I would believe that there's
go ahead.
I would believe that the process people that Berkowitz points to would have a connection to Crowley because there's that connection. The Grimson was involved in Scientology and Crowley was involved in Scientology. So I could see that connection there. I think that's a pretty clear connection with the bunch that he was running with. Okay.
Well, I would certainly like to have it corroborated with Berkowitz.
Yeah.
Berkowitz would say, oh, yeah, I was a member of Process Church, or I was a member of Thelema, or whatever it is. That'll be a step towards getting more information that would lead us to a conclusion. And I don't think the conclusion is Crawford.
Right. Now, let's get to Crawford. Now, I'm sure your interest in this is much greater than the average person. So you've read everything about Crawford that you could find?
I can't say I've read everything. Frankly, I've just come from a funeral.
Oh, sorry.
That happened shortly after the news about Crawford. And so I've not necessarily done a whole lot of research. I've done enough reading about it to have my doubts about whether or not Crawford was absolutely the only person involved in the murder of Arliss.
And
my suspicion is that he was